I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We're starting in downtown Portland because with the mask mandate over, I figured everybody's going to gather, come back to their offices, be ready to work in person in downtown Portland again, right? Not so much. It's 12:15. This sidewalk should be full. But there's nobody here because the city's not bringing back its workers for at least a month. And a number of other companies are not here either. The city of Portland has 2,950 employees who work at several offices around downtown. Many are here at the Portland building. Well, normally. The sign on the door reads closed to the public. It's been that way for some time. The city tells us some workers are inside, but most are working remotely from home or other locations. Portland managers are not requiring them to come back to the city's core on a consistent basis until April 18th. And then they'll only be required to be at the office 1 day a week. It's unclear what happens after that. Each bureau can decide. I asked for an interview to talk with the chief administrative officer. The bureau did not reply. Portland State University has double the employees, about 6,000 at its downtown campus. A spokeswoman said workers returned for 2 or 3 days a week starting last September and continuing through now. At the same time, many other companies have not returned to downtown at all. The Standard building appears deserted. It once had 2,000 workers here. At its height, downtown Portland had roughly 100,000 office workers here each day. It's nothing like that now. Just ask jeweler David Maskless.
Well, what it's like is Twilight Zone, because we have a fraction of the people on the streets that used to be on the streets. Nobody's pouring out of the buildings. And so you are just in a very quiet, sleepy, dormant situation.
He's closing the jewelry shop his father opened 90 years ago in downtown Portland, blaming a lack of shoppers and city leaders.
The employees aren't coming to their buildings, the shoppers aren't coming down, and our city has done too little, too late to help downtown and the independent merchants.
Christine Azar owns a coffee shop in downtown. She said there is more foot traffic than when COVID first hit, but it's not back to normal.
City leadership is not coming back to work. The city is open. City employees are not coming back to the office. Why is that? They should be the first back in the office because they're the ones that need to come down here and support us.
With few customers, many stores have closed. These women found it hard to get lunch downtown.
Unfortunately, everywhere we've been so far has shut down. So, no luck at this point, unfortunately.
And we're hungry.
It's not gone without notice. Many are calling on the city of Portland to do more to clean up the streets and make downtown safe again. Carrie Somm works to attract new businesses to Portland's Old Town district. She sees the impact each day.
Our downtown district, our Old Town district, the Northwest, it is really special. Nothing like this exists anywhere else. And it's slowly dying because folks are not coming back to work. They're not coming back to their offices. Our government officials, our city officials aren't coming back. And that has a massive impact on people who are trying to make ends meet.
On the other hand, working in Portland's core is no picnic. Recently, Alexandra Etheridge, a new Portland resident, as well as a leader and scientist with the U.S. Geological Survey, told Portland lawmakers her fellow employees are afraid to work downtown because of multiple problems with homeless campers and violence.
Equally egregious are random and unpredictable events such as an explosion that blew out office windows, arson, trespassing, and an unplanned presence near an uncontrolled use of a firearm in an encampment adjacent to our office. These pose imminent danger with the risk of severe injury or death for our employees, and their concerns are reasonable.
There's a lot going on there. Sorry to see Maskless go, by the way. That's where I got my wedding ring 27 years ago. And I know there are a lot more angles to this story. We could devote an entire show to the issue and still not cover everything. So I'd like to hear from you. What do you think? Do you feel safe going to downtown Portland? Do you work downtown now? Or are you dreading going back to work downtown in the office? I'm sort of leaning towards saying the city needs to make a stronger statement by bringing its workforce back 5 days a week as soon as possible. But I know that would be difficult for some. Still, it's hard to see how the downtown comes back without a return of the workforce, and you can't wait for it to get cleaned up totally and totally safe, because who knows when that's going to happen. It is a problem facing cities around the country. Let me know your thoughts. You could give us a call, 503-226-5090, or email us at thestory@kgw.com. We're just starting the first mask optional week in both Oregon and Washington, first in a while anyway. How you feeling about all that? There's a lot to think about, of course, depending on your health situation. And we've been hearing from a lot of you now. A lot of people were pretty excited to get a little bit closer to what we remember, like the runners at the Shamrock Run in downtown Portland. Look at all of them. It came back to the waterfront over the weekend for the first time since 2019.
The same weekend that the mask mandates are going away. Everything just feels really full circle. From the start of the pandemic, we can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel for the end of the pandemic.
You gotta like that. It was a party atmosphere at some restaurants this weekend too. A lot of restaurant owners pretty happy to see their patrons' faces again.
Everybody's excited. For the first time in almost 2 years, we don't have to wear masks today. And so it's been a long time coming where we get to just see our guests, they get to see us, and everybody's excited about that.
And a lot of us who are worn down by 2 years of this are ready to move on.
I'm, got both vaccines, boosted, got COVID. I'm like ready. I feel safe. I feel like I'm not putting anyone else in danger. And I literally can't wait.
Yeah, well, now you don't have to anymore. However, some of us are cautiously optimistic, very cautious. After all, we've been here before. Last summer, we made it about 6 weeks before the masks came back with the Delta variant, and the mask came back on. And the pandemic is certainly not over. Anything can happen, so be careful. And we wanted to take a look into that tonight. On Friday, we had 411 new cases of COVID-19 in Oregon. Been a while since it's been that low. Over the weekend, it was 775 cases. The numbers have been falling pretty steadily every day, and now they're way down from the peak of the Omicron surge back in January when we had 9,000 new cases a day. And actually, they said it would have been higher, but they had trouble counting higher than that. There are hundreds of hospital beds now available in Oregon for people who get sick, so overwhelming the hospitals, not a big concern right now. Also in Oregon, 83% of people have had at least one dose of COVID vaccine, and 44% of people are boosted. In Washington state, cases are also falling sharply, where 259 cases were reported on March 9th, and only 33 people were in the hospital statewide in Washington with COVID as of that same day. 81% of Washingtonians have gotten at least one dose of the vaccine. Most of Oregon and Washington are in low or medium risk levels, according to the CDC. If you're in a low risk area, they advise that you get tested if you have symptoms and to stay up to date with your vaccine. For people in the medium risk category, the CDC says, you should probably talk to your doctor about wearing a mask and taking other precautions if you're at high risk of severe disease. So that's where we stand right now. We wanted to give you the numbers so that you can make a decision about whether to wear a mask yourself or take other precautions. Now that more people are not wearing their masks. There are a lot of people that are ready to put their masks away, but there's also a lot who are not, including folks who are immunocompromised. We've heard from a few of you who say you're not going to put your mask away. You're going to keep it on. Here's a voicemail we got last week.
This is horrifying, taking away the mask mandate right now. They do this every time. The curve starts to go down, they take away the mask mandate, and it goes back up again. You watch and see. That's exactly what's going to happen. And those are not numbers. Those are human beings who get very sick and some die. I don't want to be one of them. I'll keep wearing a mask.
Well, thank you for that voicemail, and I certainly hope that does not happen. We talked with a doctor at Kaiser who says it's up to you. Don't let anyone push you to take your mask off or to keep it on. You decide what works best for you, and give everyone else a break as well.
I absolutely see why we are removing masks at this point. Cases are declining. Our percent positivity is under 5%. We have a lot of better tools to manage this pandemic. We have vaccines that have been shown to be safe and effective. I don't think there's a one size fits all for masks. And there will be some individuals, whether they're immunocompromised or have chronic medical conditions, where they are, not comfortable removing their masks. And there will be others who celebrate and can't wait to get the mask off. And so, personally, I see where we are with this, and I see why we are removing masks. I would say that we need to have some grace and respect for our neighbors, because not everyone is going to view this the same way, because we're all different and we all have different kind of risk personally and kind of risk benefit assessment.
If you are immunocompromised, doctors want you to know that we are in a very different place than we were 2 years ago.
Like, I wouldn't go to a concert. I wouldn't go to the movie theater, but you need to live your life. And, you know, if you need to have a gathering with your family or, you know, small gatherings, like, prioritize those things. Everybody is making risk benefit decisions. Unfortunately for the immunocompromised, you know, the risks are a bit higher, but they need to be able to have some balance. And I guess I reassure them that we do have additional modalities to both protect them and treat them if they were to get COVID.
While we're speaking of masks, the lifting of the mandate impacts tens of thousands of school kids in Oregon. Many head to school where masks are optional for the first time in like 2 years. That's really a big adjustment for them. Christine Pinawanich talked with a school psychologist about the impact on kids, and I got a chance to talk to her earlier today. Christine, thanks so much for joining us today in the middle of a rainstorm there. This is a big day for a lot of families with school-age kids.
Yeah. So students here at South Albany High School, along with students really at many schools across Oregon and Washington, walked into classrooms today where masks were optional. So yeah, it's a big deal. Most of Oregon's, larger school districts like Portland Public, Salem-Keizer, Beaverton, they've already made the transition, but there are some like Park Rose that are waiting to transition to a maskless option until after spring break. But I can tell you, Pat, that there are a lot of families out there that are split on this. Some parents more cautious, their families continuing to mask, while there are, of course, other families that are happy that their kids don't have to wear masks anymore in classrooms.
Yeah, and I'm just imagining for the parents that have the littles, second and third grade maybe has been all mask for the last 2 years. And so this is a huge transition, though, for those, especially for the little ones, but really for all of us. So you talked to a school psychologist about the impact on the kids. What did they have to say?
Well, the school psychologist that I spoke to works at Salem-Keizer Public Schools, and she tells me that there are benefits to consider when it comes to removing the masks. She says for teachers, they'll be able to see students' faces a little more and thus gauge a student's level of understanding a little bit better. And they also tell me that the younger students will benefit too.
The ability to see facial expressions will add back a layer of social connection, especially around being able to read others' emotions. I think some teachers are also looking forward to teaching without a mask so that they can both see and hear, the students can see and hear how they're forming their words.
And really, she says, another important thing, maybe one of the most important things, is that students and parents promote a culture of kindness. So if a student wants to wear a mask, great. If a student doesn't or a staff member doesn't, that's fine too.
Yeah, great stuff, Christine. Thank you. When it's been safe in the field, I've always asked people to take off their masks because there is so much conveyed in the facial expression. So thanks for bringing that to us. I appreciate it. Today, we're saying goodbye to a man who loved Oregon.
I like to think that my life is devoted to thanking the people of Oregon for what they have done for me and my family.
Jerry Frank leaves behind a long history of serving Oregon, almost a century. His loves, his legacy, and his secret to eating all those chocolate cakes when the story returns. Welcome back. Keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com or give us a call. Leave a voicemail at 503-226-5090. We're seeing a lot of you already writing to us about downtown conditions. Thanks. Keep them coming. Tonight we're remembering an Oregon icon, Jerry Frank. He was the VP of Meyer and Frank department stores. He also worked in Oregon's government. He was on TV, he was an author, he owned a restaurant, and he was a longtime judge of the Oregon State Fair's chocolate cake contest. The man did it all because he absolutely loved this place and he wanted to give back to the state where his family roots went very deep. Jerry Frank died this past weekend at the age of 98. So tonight, let's go into the KGW vault and take a look back at Jerry Frank's legacy.
It's another book signing, nothing new for Jerry Frank. After all, he's had several bestsellers. His Guide to New York City has sold over 1 million copies. Jerry Frank's Oregon is just the latest chapter in a career that's all about giving back to the state he loves.
Passionately.
Jerry is once again connecting with Oregonians.
It's a book about places to eat and shop and stay and people and incidents in Oregon.
And sharing the story of his family's important contribution to Oregon's retail history, Meyer and Frank department stores.
I like to think that my life is devoted to thanking the people of Oregon for what they have done for me and my family for 7 generations since 1857.
He was taught early that service was a priority, whether for the nation, serving in the U.S. Army Field Artillery in Europe, or here at home. After college at Stanford and Cambridge universities, Jerry followed in his family footsteps. He was tapped in 1955 to lead Meyer and Frank's first branch store in Salem.
The word on the street used to be that there were 4 cities on the Pacific coast: Los Angeles, San Francisco, Meyer and Frank, and Seattle.
It was in Salem where he met Mark Hatfield during a photo shoot featuring 2 of the state's most eligible bachelors. When Hatfield decided to run for governor, Jerry ran the campaign, and true to his word after his inauguration in 1959, Hatfield appointed Jerry as the sole judge of the Jerry Frank Chocolate Layer Cake Contest at the State Fair.
There were 3 cakes. Now we have as many as 135 cakes in an audience of 400 or 500 people watching this idiot eat 2 slices of all these cakes.
But Jerry, an admitted chocoholic, used a secret weapon, even to this day.
You can only do it if you have a bottle of Pepto-Bismol, because you take a swag of that at the start and at the end, and you make a Pepto-Bismol sandwich in your stomach.
The campaign and the department store were both successful, but in 1965, the Meyer and Frank stores were sold to the May Company. Jerry says it was the worst day of his life.
The in-between period between the time that Meyer and Frank was sold to the May Company and the time when Macy's bought out all the May Company stores, it was a disaster. The May Company ruined Meyer and Frank.
Jerry left the company a year later, so with more free time, he chaired Mark Hatfield's senatorial campaign in the mid-60s. Hatfield's win meant Jerry Frank goes to Washington as well, for the first term as $1-a-year man.
I had 26 wonderful years with Mark Hatfield as his chief of staff in Washington. One of my assignments was foreign relations.
It's evident all around Jerry's Salem office, an open photo album on the walls, celebrities and politicians and presidents and world leaders. It's a reflection of who Jerry is, what he's accomplished, and more.
These are probably the only tickets to Richard Nixon's impeachment that are in existence. This is a picture taken at the White House the evening of Ronald Reagan's first inaugural.
And a luncheon with the Queen of England and Prince Philip.
She comes across as being a very interested and interesting lady. I wish I could say the same about her husband.
But it's not the person's title, but what they do for others that touches him most.
Mother Teresa, instead of having a secretary or a lot of assistants, wrote these letters on her little scratch pad in her own handwriting. And that's what makes it so meaningful to me.
After serving in Washington, Jerry was anxious to come back home. In the late 80s, he began sharing his Oregon with his Friday Surprise and Frankly Speaking columns in the Oregonian.
So pack up the family and take a look.
Pack me up, Jerry, next time you go.
I love doing the television bit.
Going from print to television was a natural for Jerry. More than a decade of reporting for KPTV and K2.
They look so good.
Let's get the crunch.
Jerry continues to juggle many plates, including those at his own Salem restaurant.
Called the Conditorei, where we have the best cakes in the country.
Jerry's middle name is Wendell, but many across the state might say it's community. Frank is on the board of numerous organizations.
I have a children's care center at St. Vincent's Hospital,
with awards and honors and thanks to show for it, including the Premier Citizens Award given to him by Governor John Kitzhaber in 2000. He is the one and only recipient.
I just feel that it's important that those of us who have had the opportunities that I've had give back to the state that's made that possible.
Jerry Frank, definitely an icon in Oregon. This next one, not quite as iconic, but certainly memorable if you see it on your way to the Oregon coast. It's Idiot Creek. Sorry, not trying to call anybody names, but we're going to take a look at how it ended up with a name like that when we come back. Throughout the Northwest, there are some places with, well, let's say pretty unique names. And we want to know, how did that happen? How did we end up with a town called Boring in Oregon, which is not a boring place at all, or a state park called Cape Disappointment in Washington? And how did a creek along Highway 6 end up being named Idiot Creek? Well, we're going to get you answers, starting with that one. Devin Haskins takes us into the woods to learn how Idiot Creek came to be.
It's a shallow but fast-moving body of water, stretching 4 miles long and running through the Tillamook Forest near Highway 6. The name of this creek is Idiot Creek. To trace the history behind this name, it goes back almost 90 years. In 1933, Oregon experienced one of its worst wildfires, commonly known as the Tillamook Burn. 3 more fires broke out every 6 years until 1951. All told, 355,000 acres would be destroyed.
It basically changed everything about the landscape.
At the time, it was privately owned land. Prior to 1941, Highway 6 hadn't even been built yet.
There was really no way to get up there.
Logging camps were set up in between the fires to salvage any burned trees that could be turned into profit. One of those camps was called Ryan's Camp, formed in 1945.
And in many cases, people moved their camps. They set up logging camps and small communities to do salvage in the burn in the 30s and the 1940s.
This is Doug Decker, former director of the Oregon Department of Forestry and current vice president of Oregon's Geographic Naming Board.
Ryan's Camp was a camp that was built on a not named creek. So here we are.
Looking at this Oregon atlas, you won't find Ryan's Camp listed. Instead, Ryan's Camp was known as Idiotville. Decker says there's a couple stories about how that name came to be. One story goes that while the fire was burning in 1945, a group stayed behind after being told to leave.
They decided to stand there and fight the fire. And all the firefighters thought those were idiots who were living in that place, and that became Idiotville.
The other story, because of how remote the camp was, that anyone that chose to work there was considered an idiot. Either way, the creek adopted the name of the nearby camp, becoming Idiot Creek. And if you ever find yourself up Idiot Creek without a paddle, you'll know that's what's in a name.
Very nice. That was our Devin Haskins there. Some people think the name Idiot Creek is a little bit mean, but most recently in 2019, someone tried to get it changed to Kindness Creek, and the request was denied because those making the decision felt there was no merit to change it. So it remains Idiot Creek. Keep sending your questions and comments to the story at kgw.com. When we come back, a bit of good news philosophy right after this. For this week's Hey Help campaign, we're asking you to donate to the KGW Great Food Drive. There are plenty of ways you can help us reach our goal of providing 1.2 million meals to local families. We're almost halfway there. You can make a donation at any branch of Rivermark Community Credit Union. To see all the ways you can give, or if you need assistance, go to kgw.com/food drive, and you'll be able to see what to do there. We want to thank our partners, Pacific Office Automation, Toyota, Rivermark, and Safeway, for supporting this year's food drive. All right, well, it's Monday evening. Have you noticed it's staying lighter longer now? That's my dad joke with my kids. They're always like, Dad, daylight savings, stop it. Let's take a moment, though, to focus on some good news. There's a lot more good stuff going on in the world than bad. Our photographer, John, found a man along Vancouver's waterfront with some sage advice for each of us.
Just keep a positive attitude and things look on the up and up. Don't concentrate on the bad. Concentrate on the good. Enjoy what we have. Appreciate what we have.
There you go. Good advice to live by. Hey, that's our show. Thanks for watching. Remember, the story, our story, that never ends. See you tomorrow.
This is KGW News.